On our silver wedding anniversary, I never expected to be handed divorce papers instead of a gift. 25 years is long enough, Darren announced loudly right in front of all our friends and family. He looked proud, almost triumphant. I want someone young now, Naomi. And you need to be out of the condo by tomorrow. I blinked at him, stunned. He seemed to have forgotten that my parents had gifted me this condo decades ago. His mother, Celeste Price, sat in the corner with her usual serene, unreadable smile. She didn't say a word, as if she were enjoying the show. I rose slowly, took the microphone, and in a calm but icy voice, said something that froze Darren mid-step. The guests murmured, unsure of what to do. Darren's face went pale. I didn't even need to finish. He already knew he had underestimated me. That night, as I tried to sleep, I couldn't ignore the faint creak of the hardwood floor. Whispering came from behind the bedroom door. Darren was on the phone with his mother again. It was 3 a.m. His voice carried a strange excitement, a tone I had never heard before. "We have to do this right," he said, voice low and urgent. "She won't suspect a thing." "Of course not, son," Celeste's voice replied, calm and composed, like a puppeteer pulling invisible strings. I lay frozen in the dark, listening. What were they plotting and why now? Just a few weeks before the milestone anniversary we had both dreamed about for decades. The next morning, Darren's behavior was unsettlingly affectionate. He kissed my cheek, breathed in a deep, expensive cologne, and spoke with an enthusiasm I had never seen before. "Naomi, my love, how about we choose the restaurant for our anniversary today? I want everything to be perfect." Perfect? I raised a skeptical eyebrow. In 25 years, Darren had never cared this much about organizing anything. He always found fault in my choices, and I had grown used to handling every detail myself. "Fine," I said carefully, watching him leave for work, a strange sense of unease settling over me. His phone lay on the nightstand, screen lighting up with a notification. I couldn't resist looking. A calendar reminder. "Call S at 11 a.m. Curious, I asked aloud. "Who's S in your contacts?" Darren spun around, a flicker of panic crossing his face before he forced a calm smile. "Ah, Sanchez, just a colleague from Seattle. Consulting on a work issue," he lied. I knew the telltale sign too well. His left eye twitched slightly, a sure sign he was lying. My chest tightened. Something was very wrong. As he left, I stood by the window, watching the gray October sky over Georgetown. 25 years, a quarter of a century. We had met in college. I was a dedicated accounting student, he an ambitious manager. We had married for love, dreaming of children and a big family. But life had other plans. Doctors never found any reason why we couldn't conceive. Darren took it hard, and over time, his mother Celeste's passive-aggressive comments about grandchildren made the wound ache even more. We had eventually accepted our childless fate, pouring ourselves into our careers, travel, and each other. But something vital had shifted between us. A subtle distance I had never managed to close. A knock on the door pulled me from my thoughts. Celeste Price stood there, her usual frigid smile plastered on her face. She walked in uninvited. "Naomi, dear," she said, her tone overly sweet. "How are you?" "Preparing for the party." She always maintained a polite distance, never once calling me her daughter in 25 years of marriage. "Slowly but surely," I replied, leading her to the living room. "Darren wants to celebrate at a restaurant." "Very good," she said brightly, scanning the room as if assessing its worth. "A respectable venue with guests. Doing everything at home doesn't show how important this date is." Her gaze lingered on the condo, taking inventory without a word. I knew that look. It was the same one that made me feel small and inadequate, compared to her grand suburban mansion. Then casually she asked, "By the way, Naomi dear, I've been thinking about the future. Darren isn't so young anymore, and well, we don't have grandchildren. Don't you think it's wise to write a will just in case? For the nephews, perhaps. Government can be complicated." I felt a chill run through me. "What grandchildren?" I asked lightly. Celeste waved dismissively. "For my nephews, good boys studying and working. It's important to secure their future." I set my teacup down carefully, eyeing her. "And where do you keep the condo papers?" I asked, my voice steady. She pretended it was a casual question. "Oh, just in case." You never know what might happen. It's always good to know where things are. When she left, I sat in silence, my mind racing. The late-night call, Darren's strange burst of affection, Celeste's pointed questions about the condo. It all fit together like pieces of a puzzle I didn't want to complete. I checked Darren's computer. He had never changed his password before. Always something simple, the date we met. But not now. I tried birthdays, anniversaries, even reverse dates. Finally, success. His browser history revealed a horrifying picture. Searches about divorce, property division, legal tricks to keep assets. All over the past 2 weeks, my hands trembled. He had been planning this. For me, it was more than betrayal. It was a calculated, cold attempt to erase me from the life we had built together. Then my phone rang. Candace, my closest friend. Naomi, you won't believe what I saw, she said, her voice trembling. It was Darren, at a jeweler's in Tyson's Galleria with a young woman. She was clinging to him, hugging him like nothing else existed. Naomi. She's about 30, blonde, perfectly dressed, expensive coat, superficial. And they were so openly affectionate. I closed my eyes. I had suspected, but hearing it confirmed made my heart ache in a way I hadn't anticipated. And yet, under that ache, a fire ignited. I had spent 25 years devoted to this man, and now it seemed the game had changed. But I wasn't powerless. Not anymore. That evening, Naomi lay in bed, unable to sleep. Darren's scent still lingered in the room, but it no longer comforted her. It felt suffocating, almost threatening. Anger and betrayal merged into a quiet, calculating resolve. A plan began to take shape in her mind. The next morning, Darren left in a rush. Naomi quietly moved to the kitchen, brewing her coffee, her mind sharp and precise. The documents she had discovered, his online searches, the condo deeds, the secret divorce research were her guide. Naomi had spent 25 years with this man, and now she was going to play by her rules. Her first move was gathering every document related to Celeste and Darren's potential schemes. Condo papers, family records, financial statements, everything was cataloged. She quietly set up a meeting with a trusted lawyer under the guise of routine paperwork, ensuring no one knew her intentions. Naomi wasn't just protecting herself. She was securing the condo, her inheritance, and every asset Darren thought he could manipulate. When Darren returned home, he seemed restless, still trying to maintain the facade of charm. Naomi, however, greeted him with a calm, measured smile. Darren, she asked softly, who were you talking to on the phone last night? Darren avoided eye contact, his hands twitching. Sanchez, just a colleague. Consulting on a work issue. He lied again. Naomi's smile widened, subtle and sharp. Funny, she said, her tone light. Seeing you care so much. Maybe I should get more involved in your little projects. Darren frowned, but he couldn't argue. Naomi's calm determination and icy confidence rendered him powerless. That night, Naomi called her friend Candace. It's time, she said, voice firm. They think they're clever, but I'm 2 steps ahead. Darren and his mother have been plotting, but I've been watching, collecting. And now I control the game. Over the next few days, Darren became increasingly anxious. Naomi tracked every move, memorized every habit, and quietly duplicated all critical documents. She wasn't just waiting. She was setting the stage for the ultimate confrontation. Finally, the day of their 25th anniversary arrived. Naomi wore an elegant dress, every guest's eyes drawn to her poise and grace. Darren, still entangled in his young lover's plans, was blindsided by Naomi's serene confidence. Taking the microphone, Naomi spoke, her voice carrying through the hall. Dear friends, after 25 years, life sometimes surprises us. But the important thing is, justice and integrity always prevail. The guests murmured, confused. Darren froze, eyes wide, realizing too late that Naomi had anticipated everything. With a calm motion, she revealed the documents she had gathered. The condo deed, Darren's secret divorce research, and the evidence of his plans. Even Celeste's composed smile faltered for a moment. She realized Naomi had outsmarted them. Darren, speechless and humiliated, understood that his careful schemes had crumbled. Naomi's voice was steady and unwavering. Darren, you may want youth and excitement, but this home, this life, and my hard-earned place in it are mine. Your games end here. The night after the anniversary, Naomi sat in the quiet of the condo, sipping her tea, her mind racing. Darren had gone out to meet a colleague, but Naomi knew better. She had already traced his steps through the jeweler's surveillance footage she had secretly obtained via a discreet friend. Every movement, every lie, every whisper of his plan had been documented. Naomi smiled coldly. She had the upper hand now. Darren and Celeste had assumed she would be blindsided, emotional, weak. But they didn't know Naomi Sterling. She had 25 years of observing Darren, knowing his habits, his weaknesses, his secrets. And now she was going to turn it all against them. Her first move was subtle. A letter. Not a legal threat, not yet, but a carefully worded note slipped into Darren's briefcase. You are playing a dangerous game. Every step you take, I am already 3 ahead. Think carefully before making your next move. The effect was immediate. By the next morning, Darren was tense, nervous, stumbling over words in front of colleagues. Naomi, meanwhile, went about her day with the usual calm poise, letting him think he was still in control. Then came the second move, the revelation. Naomi arranged a casual coffee catch-up with Celeste. She spoke gently, almost warmly. Celeste, I know you've always had your eyes on the condo, the assets, even Darren's future. But it seems Darren's plans have some vulnerabilities. Celeste's smile faltered. I don't understand. Naomi placed a folder on the table. I have copies of everything. Every search, every email, every plan Darren made to bypass me. He even consulted lawyers. The condo, the accounts, the property, they're untouchable. And I've made sure the authorities and legal counsel are aware. One wrong step, and his game unravels completely. Celeste sat frozen. She realized that Naomi wasn't just fighting for her home. She was controlling the narrative entirely. The next morning, Darren came home expecting a confrontation, but Naomi was ready. She didn't yell, she didn't cry. She simply looked at him, calm, unwavering, holding a cup of tea. Darren, she said softly, I know about the rings, the plans, the lies. I've seen it all. And I've made arrangements to protect myself and this home. You wanted someone young, someone naive. But what you forgot is that I am smarter than you think. Darren's face went pale. He opened his mouth, tried to speak, but Naomi raised a finger. Not yet. Listen carefully, she continued. You will leave the condo immediately. Your mother has already been informed that her plans will no longer succeed here. Any attempt to interfere, any attempt to manipulate the assets, and it will all be exposed. Publicly. For the first time in 25 years, Naomi saw fear in Darren's eyes. Not anger, not arrogance, fear. And that was just the beginning. Everything you tried to take or hide is documented here. Consider this your chance to leave quietly. Do not attempt to return. Darren left, defeated and humiliated. Celeste never returned, realizing that Naomi had outmaneuvered them entirely. Naomi closed the door behind him and stood alone in the condo, breathing in the silence. For the first time in years, Naomi felt free. Not just from a marriage that had turned toxic, but from manipulation, secrecy, and betrayal. She had defended her home, her dignity, and her life. And most importantly, she had done it on her own terms. As the sun set over Georgetown, Naomi poured herself a glass of wine and smiled. 25 years of life, love, and struggle had taught her one truth. She was never a victim. She was always in control. The days after Darren's departure were strangely quiet. Naomi walked through the condo with a sense of ownership she hadn't felt in years. Each room, every familiar corner, now symbolized not just her past, but her victory over the betrayal that had threatened to consume her. But Naomi knew the game wasn't completely over. Darren wasn't a man to accept defeat quietly. He had resources, connections, and most importantly, his mother Celeste, who had always been the silent architect behind his schemes. Naomi needed to ensure that neither of them could strike back. She started with Celeste. A casual tea invitation was arranged, where Naomi presented herself as gracious, almost conciliatory. Celeste arrived expecting tension, confrontation, but instead found Naomi composed, confident, even kind. Celeste, Naomi began, I wanted to thank you for your concern about the condo and the inheritance. Truly, it means a lot. Celeste raised an eyebrow, suspicious. Naomi smiled, but her tone carried steel beneath the politeness. I've reviewed everything carefully, and I've ensured that all legal protections are in place. Any attempt to interfere with the property will be met with immediate legal action. I hope we can move forward respectfully. Celeste's poised exterior faltered slightly. Naomi had delivered the message without raising her voice, without threats, but with undeniable authority. Meanwhile, Naomi continued her meticulous documentation of Darren's actions. Every email, every transaction, every suspicious phone call was logged. She created a folder labeled evidence. But she didn't stop there. She also recorded notes about his visits, his meetings with his young lover, and any attempt to manipulate mutual friends or colleagues. Then Naomi played her next card. She arranged a public dinner with several mutual acquaintances and subtly ensured Darren and his lover would be mentioned, casually, without naming names. Rumors spread quietly. Whispers about infidelity, secrecy, and failed schemes. Naomi let social pressure do part of the work for her. Darren's reputation started to waver even before he realized it. One evening, as Naomi prepared for bed, her phone buzzed. It was Candace, her loyal friend. "Naomi, you did it. He's panicking. You've cornered him completely," Candace said, barely able to contain her excitement. Naomi smiled softly. "It's not just about cornering him. It's about claiming what's mine. No revenge for the sake of anger, only justice, control, and freedom." The final act came when Naomi sent Darren a formal notice, quietly filed through her lawyer, outlining that any attempt to pursue property, manipulation, or intimidation would trigger legal consequences. Darren realized, too late, that Naomi had anticipated every move he could make. And then finally Naomi sat alone in the living room, the sunset painting golden light across the condo. She reflected on the journey, 25 years of love, disappointment, betrayal, and resilience. She realized that her true victory wasn't just the condo, or even the exposure of Darren's lies. It was reclaiming herself, her power, and her life. For the first time, Naomi allowed herself a genuine smile. She poured a glass of wine, lifted it to the fading sunlight, and whispered softly, "To 25 years of surviving, thriving, and never letting anyone steal my story." The city outside hummed quietly. Naomi knew that life could still throw surprises her way. But for the first time in decades, she was ready. She was free. She was powerful. And she was in control. Weeks passed. Darren had become increasingly desperate, calling Naomi repeatedly, leaving messages that ranged from pleading to angry. But Naomi no longer felt fear, only control. She answered strategically, never revealing the full extent of what she knew, letting him unravel in frustration. One afternoon, Naomi received a small, discreet package. Inside was a crystal paperweight with a note. "You may have won this round, but this is not over." Naomi held it in her hand, letting a quiet laugh escape her. She realized Darren was trying intimidation now, an empty gesture. She carefully placed it on her desk, knowing it would only serve as a reminder of her growing strength. The real victory came on the day Darren attempted to visit the condo in person. Naomi had anticipated this. She called her lawyer, set a security system in place, and waited calmly. Darren arrived, face red with anger and panic, only to be met by a locked door and a polite message from Naomi. "Any attempt to enter will be considered trespassing and reported immediately." He stood frozen, realizing that every step he had planned had been anticipated. Every secret had been exposed. Every lie documented. Naomi had turned his own schemes into his downfall. Finally, Naomi made one last move, public closure. She hosted a small gathering, a celebratory dinner for her friends, marking her independence and victory. Darren was not invited, nor was his mother. Naomi stood at the head of the table, raising a glass. "To life, to strength, and to never letting anyone steal your story." Her friends cheered. For the first time in years, Naomi felt fully alive. Darren's young lover, the scheming mother, and all the threats that had haunted her were powerless now. Naomi had turned betrayal into triumph. That night, Naomi walked through the condo, now fully hers. Every corner, every memory, every shadow belonged to her. She no longer feared the past, nor the manipulations of others. She had survived 25 years of love and deception, and now she thrived. In her bedroom, Naomi looked in the mirror. The reflection staring back was no longer a woman defined by marriage or betrayal, but a woman who had reclaimed her power. She whispered softly, This is my life. My rules. My victory. Outside, Georgetown streets glittered under the city lights. Inside, Naomi Sterling was finally freed a few days later. Naomi received a call that made her pulse quicken, but not with fear. It was Darren, his voice trembling. "Naomi, we need to talk. Please just hear me out," he said. Naomi stayed calm, her voice steady. "Darren, I've already heard everything I need. There's nothing left to discuss. The condo is mine, the plans are exposed, and the law is on my side. Any further contact will be reported." Darren's silence on the other end of the line spoke louder than words. He realized he had truly lost control. Naomi hung up and smiled. For the first time, she allowed herself to feel the full weight of her triumph. 25 years of marriage, love, dreams, and disappointments had led to this moment. Not despair, but victory. That evening, she walked through the condo, touching each piece of furniture, each wall, each familiar corner. This home was not just bricks and mortar. It was a testament to her resilience. She thought of Darren's young lover, of Celeste's scheming, and of every night spent worrying about betrayal. All of it was gone now, rendered powerless by her foresight, patience, and courage. She poured herself a glass of wine, opened the window, and let the cool Georgetown breeze brush against her face. The city lights sparkled below, indifferent and eternal, a reminder that life continued, and that she could live it on her own terms. The final act of liberation came quietly. Naomi wrote a short note and left it on Darren's last message. "You underestimated me. You thought 25 years of marriage would make me vulnerable, but it only made me stronger. Goodbye, Darren." No signature. No emotion. Just truth. And then she deleted his contact from her phone, removed all traces of his presence from her digital life, and closed the door on the past entirely. Naomi Sterling had survived betrayal, deceit, and manipulation. She had fought not with anger alone, but with strategy, patience, and intelligence. She had reclaimed her home, her dignity, and her freedom. As she settled into her favorite chair, sipping her wine, Naomi knew that her life had begun anew. Not defined by Darren, not constrained by fear, not shaped by others' schemes. This was her story, and she would write every chapter on her own terms. For the first time in decades, Naomi smiled freely without doubt or hesitation. The condo was hers, the past was hers to remember, but it would no longer control her. She had emerged stronger, wiser, and fully in command of her destiny. Outside, the city slept, unaware of the quiet, unyielding victory inside one of its own homes. Naomi Sterling was free, finally, completely, and the world could only watch. That a week later, Naomi received a mysterious package at the condo. No sender, no note, just a small, sleek box. She opened it slowly. Inside was a set of documents. Confidential emails, financial statements, and photographs implicating Darren in several questionable deals. Evidence of the very manipulation and deception he had tried to hide. Naomi studied them carefully, a calm, calculating smile spreading across her face. She didn't need to act immediately. The knowledge itself was power. Every move Darren had made was now in her hands. She could expose him, or she could simply use it to ensure her complete security. That evening, Celeste called Naomi, her usual icy politeness tinged with nervousness. "Naomi, I hope everything is all right," Celeste said. Naomi's voice was soft but firm. "Everything is fine, Celeste. I've just been organizing my affairs. You don't need to worry." A pause. Then Celeste's voice lowered, unsure. "I see. Well, of course. I only wanted what's best for the family." Naomi smiled. "And that's exactly what I intend to protect." The call ended. Naomi poured herself a glass of wine and walked to the balcony. The city lights of Georgetown stretched endlessly below, but she felt untouchable. Darren, Celeste, the schemes, the betrayal, they all belonged to the past. Naomi had turned every threat into strength. The final touch of triumph came when Naomi hosted a small gathering with her closest friends. She didn't need to flaunt victory. Her confidence, her calm command of every situation, spoke louder than words. Every guest could see it. The woman who had survived deception, betrayal, and manipulation, and emerged stronger, smarter, and completely free. As she stood at the center of the room, raising a glass, Naomi whispered to herself, barely audible, "This is my life. I decide who enters it, who leaves it, and how I live it. No one can ever take that away." And for the first time in decades, Naomi Sterling truly felt the weight of her freedom, not as a survivor of betrayal, but as a woman who had mastered her destiny. Outside, the city slept peacefully, unaware that inside one quiet condo, a woman had claimed her life back, with all the power, dignity, and confidence she had earned over 25 years. Naomi Sterling was no longer anyone's victim. She was unstoppable. Weeks turned into months. Naomi had fully reclaimed her life, but she knew true freedom wasn't just about protecting her home or assets. It was about reclaiming her identity. She started small, redecorating the condo to reflect her taste, filling it with art she loved, plants she nurtured, and memories that were truly hers. Each choice was deliberate, a subtle declaration of independence. Darren tried to reach out sporadically, emails, texts, even a few whispered rumors through mutual acquaintances, but Naomi ignored them all. She wasn't afraid, she was untouchable. Every attempt to manipulate, to intimidate, had failed. She held all the cards now. Celeste, sensing her son's growing desperation, tried one last time. She called Naomi late one evening, her voice tight. "Naomi, I think we need to discuss Darren," Celeste said. Naomi smiled quietly. "We've already discussed him, Celeste. I'm afraid there's nothing more to talk about." There was silence on the other end. Naomi knew Celeste was calculating, trying to find a loophole, but Naomi had anticipated every possible angle. Over the next few weeks, Naomi began exploring opportunities she had postponed for decades. Travel, friendships, professional ventures she had once put on hold. She reconnected with old friends, invested time in passions that were hers alone, and even started mentoring young women in finance, passing on knowledge she had gained over years of dedication. One evening, as she stood on the balcony with a glass of wine, watching the lights of Georgetown sparkle below, Naomi reflected on everything she had endured. Betrayal, manipulation, and deception had tried to define her. But she had turned each challenge into a stepping stone, a lesson in patience, strategy, and self-respect. The final moment of closure came quietly, almost unexpectedly. Naomi received a letter, not from Darren or Celeste, but from a law firm confirming that all disputes over the condo and assets had been permanently settled in her favor. No further legal challenge could be brought against her. Naomi held the letter, and for the first time in years, she allowed herself a deep, unburdened breath. She felt the weight of every anxious night, every whispered conversation, every secret she had uncovered. Lift from her shoulders, she set the letter down and looked out at the city, smiling to herself. She had survived 25 years of marriage, endured betrayal, faced down manipulation, and come out stronger than ever. Naomi Sterling was not just free. She was unstoppable. A woman fully in control of her life, her home, and her destiny. The city slept below, oblivious to the quiet triumph unfolding in one apartment. But Naomi knew something they didn't. She had won. Not just a battle, but the war for her life, her dignity, and her power. And as the night air swept through the condo, she whispered softly, a promise to herself. "This is only the beginning. My life, my rules, my victory. Forever." The months passed, and Naomi's life blossomed in ways she had never imagined. The condo, once a place shadowed by tension and betrayal, now felt alive with her energy. She filled it with light, laughter, and things that truly reflected who she was. Every book on the shelf, every painting on the wall, every photograph she chose was a declaration of her independence. Darren had long since disappeared from her life. He called once more, desperately, his voice trembling with frustration and regret. But Naomi didn't answer. She didn't need to. She had already won. The condo, her finances, her freedom. All were firmly in her control. Even Celeste had backed down, realizing the woman they had underestimated was far stronger than either of them had anticipated. One crisp autumn evening, Naomi hosted a quiet dinner with her closest friends. There was no need for grand gestures or celebrations. The evening was intimate, joyful, and full of warmth. Naomi's laughter was effortless, her presence radiant. She spoke softly but with authority, recounting stories from her past with a gentle humor that only added to her aura of strength. After everyone left, Naomi stood on the balcony, gazing at the twinkling lights of Georgetown below. For years she had been trapped by love, loyalty, and expectation. She had endured betrayal and manipulation. But now she was free, truly free. She poured herself a glass of wine and raised it in a quiet toast to herself, to resilience, to wisdom, to never letting anyone define your worth, to freedom, to victory. Naomi felt a profound sense of peace. She realized that the real triumph was not the condo, not even the exposure of Darren's lies, but the reclamation of her own life. She was no longer a victim of circumstance or manipulation. She was the author of her own story. As the cool night air drifted through the open balcony, Naomi smiled, her reflection in the glass looking back at her with quiet power and confidence. For the first time in decades, she felt fully alive, fully in control and completely herself. Her story, once defined by love, loss, and betrayal, had transformed into one of empowerment, resilience, and triumph. And Naomi Sterling knew this truth with absolute clarity. The life she had reclaimed would never be taken from her. She whispered softly to the night, a vow that carried both triumph and promise. This is my life, my rules, my destiny, forever. And with that, Naomi turned from the balcony, the city lights shimmering below, and stepped into her new life, free, unstoppable, and entirely her own.